Welcome everybody. This is your host, Dan Goodwin. This is the God's Final Jubilee program. This is December the 6th, the day right before that day that shall live in infamy. But this may be a day also that lives in infamy. We're not sure what's going to happen. Maybe you live in an igloo somewhere. Maybe you don't know what happened today. But at 1 o'clock Eastern Standard Time today, POTUS, President Trump, kept a campaign promise and decided to acknowledge that Jerusalem is in fact the capital of Israel, which is common knowledge to those of us that know, as well as common knowledge to those who own the place called Israel, the Jews. Jerusalem is the capital. It's been their capital all along. And America voted to accept that way back in 1995. But every year and every president that comes along signs a waiver every 6 months, waiving the placing of the embassy in Jerusalem. And so that's why it's been left, I think, 60 miles away in the city of Tel Aviv. I was there back in June. And that is where the U.S. Embassy is at this moment. It has been for many years. And every president who runs for office, and every time a president comes along, he makes the claim that he's going to move the embassy to Jerusalem, but never does it. This president did it, and he did it today at 1 o'clock Eastern Standard Time. He made the announcement. And I'm going to explain what that means as far as I understand it. As I've already said, Jerusalem's already the capital of Israel. If you ask anybody in Israel, ask any Jew, he'll tell you the capital is Jerusalem. It's just the countries around the world who are having trouble with that, and kind of a shame, huh? But, you know, there's only one country that has a right to determine its capital, and that's the country that we're speaking of. Nobody gets to determine our capital. We determine our capital. And the Jews determine their capital. And of course, we've got this Palestinian problem. Now, many of the critics are saying that we shouldn't do this now, and this is going to hinder the peace process. I got one question for you. What peace process? What peace are you talking about? There is no peace process over there. There are no peace negotiations going on. Nothing that means anything. As long as I've been old enough to understand, all the way back to Clinton and Arafat, I remember those peace deals going on, and the shaking of hands and the hugging, and then the very next day, Arafat would go out and make a speech declaring that he won't be happy till Israel's at the bottom of the Red Sea. They do not want peace with Israel. They want Israel dead. Now get a hold of that tonight. Because that's what this is about. So, if you're just joining us here on Facebook, Facebook Live, we're going to talk about the city of Jerusalem and what took place today. If you're watching via YouTube, I want to encourage you to find us on Facebook, the God's Final Jubilee Facebook page, and I'll try to put a link on the YouTube channel there for you. But most of my YouTube videos that I do at the same time as I do a live stream on Facebook. And so if you see me looking down, I'm looking at some of the comments on the page. If you may like to watch us live, you may like to comment or whatnot on there, that'd be something for you to consider. So, and I start the Facebook sooner, and I keep the Facebook going after I get done on the YouTube channel. So in other words, when the YouTube's program ends, the Facebook goes on, and we chat a little bit. So, all right, we got a good crowd on here tonight, and I'm going to keep this brief. But I want you to know that Jerusalem is and has always been the capital, all the way back thousands of years. And in fact, 1948 and 1967, Jerusalem is the capital. And by the way, Israel has its government not in Tel Aviv; it has it in Jerusalem. Netanyahu, his offices are there. The Knesset and the Supreme Court and others, the governing body of Israel is right now, and has been for many years, in Jerusalem. So what took place today? President Trump simply made the statement that he is acknowledging that Jerusalem is the capital, and has made the decision that we are in fact going to move the embassy of the United States out of Tel Aviv and into Jerusalem. It's not going to happen tomorrow, not going to happen next week. In fact, they're saying it could take 3 to 4 years, which I think is kind of sad, but they have to build a building, get property, get security, and all that goes into that. So it's going to take time. So nothing's going to change right away. However, many of the Muslims and Palestinians and governing bodies around the world are all making threats that they're going to do great harm to people. And see that? How do you make peace with people like that? People who come out when they get mad at you, they say they're going to kill you and they're going to blow stuff up. How do you make peace with those kind of people? So forget the peace thing. This is not going to hinder peace. There is no peace. There is no peace deal. The only peace, the only thing that they understand over there is you mess with us, we'll blow you up. That's the only way to deal with them. So, you know, they want peace over there, but there is no peace. And how do you make peace with these people? So, I'm glad it happened, but I also want you to understand this. And I heard Mr. Trump say it himself today. Mr. Trump, and I cautioned people about this a year and a half ago when Mr. Trump was running for president. I cautioned people about the fact that Mr. Trump seems to be for a two-state solution. Now, maybe you don't know what a two-state solution is. A two-state solution means the way to peace is to Israel is their own government, and the Palestinians acknowledge that Israel is a state, and then the world acknowledges that Palestine, which doesn't exist, but the Palestinian state. In other words, where the Palestinians are now, they will make a government out of that. They will make a sovereign state that is recognized by the world, by the UN and everybody else. And they think that that's going to make peace. And I got news for you, my friend. That's not going to make peace, because the Palestinians do not want peace. They want to take over Israel. They hate the Jews. Do you understand most of the world right now hates the Jews, including America? Do you realize the state that little nation is in is as bad or worse than it was in Hitler's day? They're hated by the world. They're hated by everybody around them. They're hated by many right here in America. We're truly in the last days. But, all right, we got a few others with us tonight. We got Derek with us. He is out there in Harlan, Kentucky. We've got Brother Larry Engelman. He's Ohio, I think. I've lost it. I think he's in Ohio, but I can't remember. But good friends. And all right, let me read a scripture for you in the book of Daniel about Jerusalem. What's the big deal about Jerusalem? What's with Jerusalem? Why is it so important? I'll tell you why. Because Daniel chapter 9, 70 weeks. First, of course, Jerusalem goes all the way back. It goes all the way back to the Salem in the Bible. Jerusalem. And it's always been Israel. As long as there's been an Israel, Jerusalem, as long as they've been in the promised land when they crossed over Egypt, when they crossed the Jordan River, once they took the land there, Jerusalem's been a part of Israel. 70 weeks are determined upon thy people and upon thy holy city. This is Daniel chapter 9, verse 24. We're going to see Jerusalem in this prophecy way back in Daniel 9. This very important prophecy of Daniel chapter 9. 70 weeks are determined upon thy people and upon thy holy city to finish the transgression and to make an end of sins and to make reconciliation for iniquity, and to bring in everlasting righteousness, to seal up the vision, the prophecy, and to anoint the most holy. To anoint the most holy is to anoint Jesus Christ as King of Kings and Lord of Lords, which happens at the end of the 70th week, at the end of the tribulation period. Know therefore and understand that from the going forth of the commandment to restore and to build Jerusalem, shall be, under Messiah the Prince shall be 7 weeks, 62 weeks. In other words, 69 weeks. The street shall be built, and the wall, even in troublous times, and after 62 weeks, or in the 69th week, Messiah shall be cut off. And that happened 2,000 years ago with Jesus Christ when he was, when he came in on the donkey, and then they rejected the Messiah, put him on a cross. He was cut off. And so the 1 week of years is hanging out there, and it happens to be that Jerusalem is the center of that. Jerusalem is part of an important part of the 70th week, which is, as we understand it, the tribulation period. As the Old Testament understood it, the 70th week of Daniel. All right. And And then he talks about another prince that shall come. That's the Antichrist that comes in Revelation 6. He shall come and destroy the city and the sanctuary, and the end thereof shall be with a flood, and unto the end of the war desolations are determined. And he shall confirm the covenant with many for 1 week. And that week is a week of years, 7 years. He confirms a covenant. Doesn't say that he devises a covenant. It says he confirms a covenant. Now, who does he confirm a covenant with? Nobody's 100% for sure, but it certainly appears to be Israel and somebody. It could be the world. It could be the one world order. It could be a Palestinian thing. We don't know. We're only guessing when we throw stuff out. But notice the wording there. He confirms a covenant with many for 1 week or 7 years, the tribulation period. And in the midst of that week, he'll cause the sacrifice and the oblation to cease. This is verse 27. For the overspreading of the abominations, he shall make it desolate. So right in the middle of that 70th week, he breaks that covenant and he goes into the temple. I believe that's where the 2 witnesses are killed, and I believe that's that they will rise from the dead from the streets of Jerusalem. Moses and Elijah will ascend back to heaven, and that's where the 144,000 become believers. They run for their lives. The Antichrist chases them, and that's where the time of Jacob's trouble begins, right there at the middle of the 70th week, or the middle of the tribulation, as we call it. And that's the first people who become believers during the tribulation. I know that's not something a lot of people want to hear, but I'm telling you, nobody is saved the first half of the tribulation. I don't have time to go into that right now. But the first fruits of the tribulation, the first people saved, are these 144,000, and they are saved right there at the middle of the tribulation. That means the first half of the tribulation, everybody that dies goes to hell. That's very sobering to think about. Good to see you, Derek. I said you're back in Missouri. Are you back at the boys' home, Brother Larry? Let me know. I have not been out there in a long time. All right, so that's Daniel chapter 9. I want you to understand that this thing about Jerusalem is important, very important. Israel is not gone away. Israel has not gone away in prophecy. Israel is going to be in the limelight again, going to take center stage. When the rapture happens, it's going to be all about Israel and the peace that's going to take place there, the protection of the Antichrist for Israel until the middle of the tribulation, where he goes in and commits the abomination of desolation, Matthew 24. And by the way, Matthew 24 is all Old Testament. So it's talking about the Jew, all right? I say it's Old Testament. I say it was given before the rapture was even understood. You won't find the rapture there. You will find the gleanings there. All right, I want you to turn to Zechariah, if you got a Bible, chapter 12. I want you to see that, that the Jews are spoken again in Zechariah, but they're spoken of, Jerusalem is spoken of in a future sense. In other words, they're mentioned here in a post-rapture setting. Or in other words, after the church is gone and the tribulation is here. In fact, most of this is after the tribulation, right at the end of it. Let me read you a few verses. Zechariah chapter 12, verse 1. The burden of the word of the Lord for Israel, saith the Lord, which stretcheth forth the heavens and layeth the foundation of the earth, and formeth the spirit of man within him. In other words, this is who's talking. This is God, the creator of the earth, the one who put the spirit in man. So get the context here. God is speaking. And who is God? God's the one who stretched forth the heavens. Stretched for these heavens we see. He stretched that out up there. And he laid the foundation of the earth. And he formed the spirit of man within him. Then look what he says in verse 2. Behold, I will make Jerusalem a cup of trembling unto all the people round about. Now notice the wording there. I will make. I will make. That's future. And look what it says here in verse 2. I will make Jerusalem a cup of trembling unto all the people round about when they shall be in the siege both against Judah and against Jerusalem. And in that day will I make Jerusalem a burdensome stone for all people. All that burden themselves with it shall be cut in pieces. Though all the people of the earth be gathered together against it. I put a star there in my Bible and I wrote down the bottom Armageddon. That's the people of the earth going to Jerusalem, going to the valley of Megiddo, where I was back in June. Got a video of it on my YouTube. You can watch the valley of Megiddo. The nations, the people of the world are going to gather. The armies of the world are going to gather there to fight against God and against His Christ. And they're going to fight against Jesus. And I got news for you. They're going to lose. I've read the last pages. And so Jerusalem is an important place in the world. In fact, it's the center of the world. It's and it's going to be the center of the tribulation period. And here it is. Let me read a couple other places here. Let me turn the page. Look at Zechariah chapter 14. Behold, verse 1. The day of the Lord cometh. Now this is future. This hasn't happened yet. And thy spoil shall be divided in the midst of thee, for I will gather all nations against Jerusalem to battle. And it's talking about the same thing that we just read in chapter 12. It's talking about the nations coming together to fight against God, to shake their fist at God Almighty. I will gather. In fact, God gathers them there. Against Jerusalem, not against New York City, not against Babylon, not against Rome, against Jerusalem. He gathers them in Jerusalem to fight. And the city shall be taken, and the houses rifled, and the women ravished, and half the city shall go forth into captivity, and the residue of the people shall not be cut off from the city. Then shall the Lord go forth and fight against those nations, as when he fought in the day of battle, and his feet shall stand in that day upon the mountain of Olives. See, this is the second coming of Christ. Revelation 19:11. This is Christ coming back on the white horse. He ends this battle with the word of his mouth, goes to the mountain of Olives, splits it, and he rides down on the donkey into the city and sets up the millennial kingdom. His feet shall stand in that day upon the mountain of Olives, verse 4, which is before Jerusalem. And I did a video there as well back in June. The standing on the mountain of Olives, you look right down on the city, right there on the eastern gate. And that's what it says, which is before Jerusalem on the east. And you see the eastern gate there. And the mountain of Olives shall cleave in the midst thereof toward the east and toward the west, and there shall be a very great valley. And verse 5, and ye shall flee to the valley of the mountains, for the valley of the mountains shall reach. Ye shall flee like as ye fled from before the earthquake in the days of Uzziah, the king of Judah. And the Lord my God shall come, and all the saints with thee. And it shall come to pass in that day that the light shall not be clear. See, they didn't see the rapture in the Old Testament, but they certainly saw and understood the second coming. In the book of Jude, the Lord's he talked about the Lord coming with 10,000s of his saints. It's right here. A couple other places here. Verse 16 in Zechariah. And it shall come to pass that everyone that is left of all the nations which come against Jerusalem at the battle of Armageddon shall even go up from year to year to worship the King of hosts, and to keep the Feast of Tabernacles. See, even the 7 feasts are going to continue into the millennial reign and into the kingdom age. The Feast of Tabernacles is going to be kept every year. In fact, you read the context of the passage, and you'll find that it's bad news if you don't attend that. There's no skipping it. My point is this: I wanted you to know that Jerusalem is an important city to this day, and it is a very important place during the tribulation and after the tribulation. It is, in fact, where Jesus Christ is going to rule and reign from during the tribulation period. You better believe what goes on there is important. So what took place today? What does it mean? I don't know if it means anything, but it means that America has decided to acknowledge publicly that Jerusalem is, in fact, the capital. All right, now, this thing about hurting the peace process, there is no peace process. And as I began to say a little while ago, Mr. Trump, I heard him say it today, and I shed light on this before the election. And as a little bit of a warning, that Mr. Trump seems to believe in the two-state solution, as I think does his son-in-law, Jared, who's negotiating some of this. So I don't know what this all means, but Mr. Trump seems to think that Jerusalem's going to be split in half, and the Palestinians are going to have a country. They're going to have statehood in this agreement that he's working on. The Palestinians will have statehood, and half of Jerusalem will be theirs for their capital. Israel, which is already a state, will have half of Jerusalem, which it has now, by the way, where the Knesset and Netanyahu's offices are. They're on the new side of Jerusalem. Old Jerusalem is kind of controlled by the Muslims and the Palestinians at this time. And it seems to me that that's what the deal that's in the works here is that they're going to split Jerusalem. And by the way, that's a huge mistake. That's a huge mistake. But there are some who believe prophetically that that's what happens during the tribulation. And what the peace deal is all about is, in fact, I'm not saying I agree with this. I'm saying that many teach that there will be a two-state solution. There will be two nations that are in control of Jerusalem. I don't know that I agree with that or not. I'm not prepared to give you what I think about that at this time. That's not what this program's about. But that is one of the views out there. So it remains to be seen. But I want you to understand that this isn't such completely great news as everyone's making out to be, because of the fact that we seem to be pushing for a two-state solution and splitting Jerusalem down the middle and having a Palestinian state, and they control half of it, and then Israel has the other half of Jerusalem. So it remains to be seen where this goes and what this means. And it's also needs to be understood that there's a threat of great rioting and bloodshed. Even the leader of Turkey is threatening all kinds of things. Of course, all these different nations and leaders are coming out threatening Israel over this. There's nothing new about that. They hated Israel before this happened. So don't worry about that stuff. Mr. Trump's not causing this. This was already a problem. And you mean to tell me this is licensed to go blow people up because the United States is moving its embassy to Jerusalem? Are you kidding me? All it is an excuse for some of these people to blow things up again. All right, so that's what's going on. That's what happened today. And it's understood. Somebody posted on here about the Pope. The Pope made a statement. Now, I did not hear his statement, so I'm a little reluctant to speak about it. I did hear a news commentator guy explain what the Pope said, but I haven't heard it for myself. Supposedly, the Pope was not happy with Mr. Trump's decision and was cautioning. And that's fine. That's his opinion, but I don't agree with him. So, where were the popes in 1941 when the Jews were being exterminated? The truth is, they were on the side of Hitler, and that's a fact. And they apologize for that. That's how true it is. I'm not sure that what the Pope says about this agreement means a hill of beans. Because they got a bad track record with Israel. So, let's see. Robert says, I have a number of Emil friends who can see no future for Israel on the earth. I'm sure you have talked to those kind of folks. I'm not sure what you mean, Robert, by maybe you spelt it wrong or maybe I'm not understanding this. I have a number of Emil friends who can see no future for Israel. Are you talking about the guy that has a YouTube channel? He's in Israel. Is that who you're talking about? I'm not sure, Robert. Maybe you can clarify. I'm sure if you talk to those kind of folks, have you been able to convince any of those people of their error? And if so, what scripture have you used to get them to see the truth? Today's decision by our presidents will give me an excellent opportunity to bring up the subject. Any thoughts? Or just what I've already said, Robert, and many other things. I mean, Israel is got to be in their land. There has to be an Israel. We're going to be taken out of here, and God's going to deal with Israel. And Jeffrey comes in and says, I believe the abomination of desolation happened in 70 AD. Absolutely not. Absolutely not, Jeffrey. The abomination of desolation has not happened yet. And now there are many types and figures of that, and certainly what happened in 70 AD is a foreshadowing of what's coming. But I promise you, Revelation chapter Revelation chapter 4 and chapter 5 and 6 and 7 and 8 and 9. Revelation, the tribulation has not happened yet. The events of Revelation chapter 6 through 19 have not happened. In the first 4 opening of the seals alone, 1/4 of the world dies. Now that hasn't happened, and that didn't happen in 70 AD. So, amillennial people, Robert says. Yeah, I am not an amillennialist. I do not believe it. I am not a preterist. I am wholeheartedly against the teaching of preterism. Preterism is the doctrine that the Jew, the Israel does not exist anymore. The church has replaced, you've heard the term replacement theology, preterism. And it's a lie, absolute lie. It's not true at all. And by the way, you'd be shocked, some of the big name preachers that some of you listen to, they're preterist. And you'd be surprised. I could, let's see. All right. Well, as far as YouTube goes, I'm going to shut her down there. Feel free to comment. Keep it kind and polite. We're not going to have a debate on YouTube, on my channel. We're not going to have a debate about preterism and replacement theology and all that stuff. It's not going to happen. So I hope I've been a help to you today. But very interesting what's going on. Again, this is going to take years to move the embassy there. This is more of a acknowledgement that it's going to happen, and the fact that, yes, we now are acknowledging that we believe Jerusalem is the capital, and it's going to take a few years to move it. So that's all that happened. But I also want you to understand that Mr. Trump believes in the two-state solution, and I do not. I think that's a disaster to make a state out of Palestine over there. They're devout enemies. They will not be happy until Israel is pushed into the Red Sea. And you cannot have peace with those people. So it'd be interesting to see where this leads and what happens as a result of it. So the website's godsfinaljubilee.com, the Facebook page, God's Final Jubilee Facebook page. The brand new book is doing very well, by the way. The Mystery of the Jubilee. If you don't have this new book yet, you need this book. Very exciting book. There's chapters in this book that'll absolutely stun you when you The Mystery of 3 Babylons. My goodness, you need to read that. There's so much confusion about Babylon, and there's so much confusion about where America is in the Bible. You need to read this chapter, The Mystery of 3 Babylon. By the way, it's the longest chapter in the book. It's also on Amazon as a Kindle e-reader. So feel free to go to Amazon.com and just type in Mystery of the Jubilee, find it. We've been in the top 10 for quite a while, off and on the Amazon there. So if you're an e-book reader, you can get the book there on Kindle. So, all right, well, we'll shut her off there, and God bless you.